When we look at the first civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt, we see progress driven by absolute power. These empires were built on rigid hierarchies, defined by massive warfare and towering stone monuments meant to immortalize their rulers. We know their kings, their laws, and their myths because we can read their words. From 3300 to 1300 BCE, a different civilization flourished across South Asia. The Indus Valley Civilization encompassed over 1,000 settlements and massive urban centers. Despite their scale and sophistication, the people who built these cities remain silent. Their writing is everywhere, yet it is completely unreadable to the modern world. The Indus Valley, or Harappan, civilization occupied a geographic footprint significantly larger than Egypt and Mesopotamia combined. Despite its scale, archaeologists have found a puzzling lack of the typical markers of empire. There are no grand palaces, no monuments to warlords, and no evidence of large-scale, organized warfare. This creates a central mystery. How was such a vast area controlled for centuries without the use of force? Early theories suggested the civilization must have been imported by foreign invaders who brought these systems with them. However, recent evidence indicates that the Harappans didn't need external conquerors to build their world. They created a complex, stable society using a homegrown framework of radical standardization. At the site of Rocky, one of the largest Harappan cities, researchers recently excavated a cemetery to test the origins of the population. By carefully obtaining powder from these excavated skeletal remains, a team of geneticists successfully sequenced a complete ancient Harappan genome. The results showed this Harappan individual lacked ancestry from Western steppe pastoralists or Iranian farmers. The genetic split from those Western lineages occurred over 12,000 years ago. This confirms Indus Valley farming wasn't introduced by migration, but developed independently by local foragers. The Indus civilization was an entirely homegrown phenomenon, building its massive network of cities from the ground up without relying on external populations. This independence is visible in their unique approach to urban planning. Cities were laid out in a precise grid, with streets oriented to the cardinal directions to divide the urban space into rectangular blocks. Construction was uniform across the entire region. The Harappans used standardized fired clay bricks with consistent dimensions to build multi-story housing and massive public structures. Their engineering focused heavily on public sanitation. Streets were equipped with covered, brick-lined drains designed to carry wastewater and sewage away from the residential areas. Instead of laboring on royal tombs, the Harappans prioritized public infrastructure. Their most significant monuments were structures like the Great Bath, a massive tank dedicated to communal use. This macro-level order was mirrored in the micro-level of their trade. Archaeologists have recovered hundreds of stone weights used across the civilization to regulate the economy. As this table shows, the weights were standardized with remarkable precision. Across the entire civilization, these measurements fluctuate by less than 6% from the mean. They utilized a dual mathematical system. For small precious materials, they used an octal system based on a unit of exactly 0.89 grams. For larger commercial goods, the system transitioned into decimal increments. Every transaction in this network was verified by standardized trade seals, bearing a script that was used for centuries across every major city. This mathematical consistency allowed for a high-trust economic network that spanned 1 million square kilometers, held together by shared rules rather than forced tribute. The physical remains of these cities suggest a society where the benefits of infrastructure were widely shared. Excavations show that even standard houses were multi-roomed, built around central courtyards, and connected to the public drainage system. This emphasis on shared standards extended to social roles. While men typically handled farming, historical evidence indicates that women occupied highly respected positions with the freedom to participate in the economic and religious life of the city. This respect is widely reflected in their archaeological record, which is filled with figurines of the mother goddess, or Prakriti, suggesting a culture that prioritized female figures in its spiritual world. In the Harappan world, social equilibrium was built into the architecture. By prioritizing public health and economic fairness, they created a level of stability and status for their citizens that was unique in the ancient world. This is the Harappan script. Archaeologists identified over 400 distinct signs on small objects like steatite seals. Analysis of character spacing indicates it was read right to left. In longer inscriptions, they used an alternating direction for each line, known as boustropheton. Because we have never found a bilingual text, a Harappan version of the Rosetta Stone, decades of computational analysis and linguistic study have failed to produce a consensus on what these symbols represent. With their written records inaccessible, we have to look at the physical structures they left behind to reconstruct how their society functioned and what they might have been recording. Their urban engineering reveals a preoccupation with order. Cities were laid out in precise grids, constructed from fired clay bricks of standardized dimensions. This precision extended beneath the streets. They developed complex water-covered brick-lined drains and the massive stone-cut reservoirs discovered at Dolavira. This systemic organization wasn't limited to construction. It was built into their economy through a sophisticated numerical system based on tens and eights. Their stone trade weights were incredibly accurate. This data shows how their weight units followed a strict, predictable ratio, with a margin of error of less than 6% across the entire civilization. They used these standardized tools to facilitate a maritime trade network reaching as far as Mesopotamia, launching ships from specialized dockyards like Lofal. The fact that these weights, brick sizes, and city layouts remained consistent over 1,000 miles suggests that a centralized administrative authority managed the standards of the Indus Valley. DNA evidence suggests this administration oversaw a cosmopolitan population, one distinct from the steppe pastoralists or Iranian farmers who would later inhabit the region. Yet Harappan cities lack the typical markers of ancient power. There are no massive palaces, no grand tombs for elites, and no military monuments. Instead, evidence points toward an egalitarian structure. Small figurines suggest women held high social status, with widespread reverence for a mother goddess figure. If the Harappans were a peaceful, trade-focused society, it changes how we view their writing. Are these the words of poets and kings, or the records of merchants? The Dravidian hypothesis suggests the script links to Dravidian tongues spoken in southern India today, like Tamil or Brahui. Another theory connects them to early Sanskrit, identifying their settlements with the Saraswati River mentioned in the Rig Veda. Others look to tribal languages, like those of the Munda family, finding similarities in the way word roots and sounds are structured. Some researchers offer a utilitarian view. Since inscriptions are so short, they may not represent a spoken language at all, but rather a non-linguistic system of codes used to track ownership of goods, calculate local taxes, and manage extensive trade inventory. Whether it records a spoken tongue or serves as a sophisticated administrative ledger, the script was an ever-present tool used throughout the Indus trade networks. For a long time, it was believed that this civilization ended in a sudden, violent invasion. Archaeological evidence has since corrected that story. After 700 years of stability, the Harappan cities began to disappear. The decline wasn't caused by war, but by environmental shifts, changing river courses and a drying climate. The collapse was gradual. A shifting climate and centuries of increasing aridity caused the rivers that sustain their cities to dry up or change course. As the water vanished, the megacities were slowly abandoned. The population migrated towards smaller, rural settlements, and the integrated Indus culture began to fragment. In these smaller communities, the complex administrative systems of the cities were no longer necessary. The standardized weights disappeared, and the script eventually fell out of use. This loss is the reason we know so little about their inner lives. Without a way to read their signs, we are missing their laws, their personal histories, and their own names for themselves. Modern genetic studies show that the Harappan population is the single largest source of ancestry for South Asians today. Their enduring legacy is the proof that human beings can build massive, complex civilizations without relying on slavery or warfare. They achieved unparalleled scale by investing in public infrastructure, in scientific standardization, and a social contract that valued the well-being of the community. The Indus Valley offers a different model for how a society can function. Until a bilingual text is found, The Harappan script remains a silent testimony to one of human history's most organized and peaceful societies, a civilization whose true voice is still waiting to be heard.